Good day to you, friends and fans of the great Lewis Johns. My name is Matthew Reynolds, and I am going to run you through an EXS24 sampler kit that I have created for Lewis's new samples. It works fine for me, and I'm coming at this from more of a songwriter point of view. Most of my use of Logic and samples is for demoing purposes. So I should start with a little disclaimer that I am no engineer. I know my way around a recording studio, but certainly not a professional in one. Let's say that. So, in this wonderful package that Lewis has given me, you get a bunch of different samples here for one of the kits he has at the ranch. So we have two snares, the Bell Brass and the Brady. We have four different toms, a 10-inch, 12-inch, 14-inch, and 16-inch. And then we have a Yamaha 22-inch bass drum. And within each folder you'll get here, if you click on that, you'll get all of the different samples and velocities for each drum. What they come in, is it six or seven different different categories here. You get different mics. You get where's the main thing? So you have the normal kick drum, the dry signal. You have a kick in. You have here in the case of the kick drum, you have the sub, as well. Then we also have overheads, and Lewis has been kind enough to also sample some room mics, and we have a close room mic, a medium room mic, and a far room mic. Added to that, Lewis has also gone the extra step and included this microphone, and it's a Coles microphone doing what we call in the biz a slam mic, and that's usually the placement of it is usually somewhere between the kick drum and the snare drum, and it's usually put through, I don't know, a lot of compression or some saturation or something like that, some distressors, I don't know, and it ends up sounding quite sort of crunchy and adds a liveness to the otherwise quite dry sounding samples. So we have that for every single drum, all of the different ones here. I have only actually added to the EXS instrument. I've only added the 12 and 16-inch toms because I'm unlikely to use the 10 and the 14. But what I thought I could do here is quickly run you through, if you wanted to add those, I'll quickly run you through how you do that. As I say, I'm coming at this from a songwriter point of view, and if you're coming from that as well, you may not know how to do this stuff. So what you need to do is open up a new instrument and open up a EXS sampler and a multi-output one. We already have that selected. This will bring up there. If you load, go in here, and you can I can't remember how to do it at this precise moment in time, but you can click on your, I think you need to add the kit within your sampler instruments, which is in one of the root folders. You'll be able to find how to do that on the internet, or you just double click on it or something, I'm sure it'll work. But we need to come up here. Once you've got the kit loaded, if you click edit here, it brings up the instrument editor, and that's all of the different samples laid out with all of their relevant velocity ranges, and also outputting to the right channels. I've laid this out how it works for me best. If if that doesn't work for you, then obviously go in and change it. But I did this for me just so I could use it, and in speaking to Lewis, figured it might be helpful for some people if they don't, they're not very au fait with the inner workings of the EXS sampler. And most people use Contact or Slate Trigger or something like that, but I am way too cheap to be buying that. So, right. Within the instrument editor, what you have is each sample has all of these different options that you can choose from. And what we're going to concentrate on here is making sure that the velocity range is correct for each of the samples. The way Lewis has arranged them is as follows. We have the main, the loudest sample, the loudest velocity, which will just be numbered, in this case, a close room. In the, going down, it's just cold slam. The other ones have numbers afterwards, and so it's 11 is the quietest, and the one without a number here is the loudest. So what you can do if you want to add one of the toms, let me go up here. So we'll add the 12-inch tom here. I tend to start with them as I think about them visually, but you can do whatever you want. Select all of the samples for one microphone and drop those in. What you probably want to do is click on this second one here, drum zone without range, and click yes. That should pop them all on one key. In this case, it's popped them on C3. So now we want to go through and just change all of those to be where we want them to be. In this case, I have used, on the output here, I've outputted the first tom to 11 and the second tom to 12. So I'll put the third tom here on 13, but you can put it wherever you like, as I say, once you have the samples. You want to turn pitch off. You don't want that on. You just want it to be a one shot, which is what you want for drums, really. That just means when the key is hit, the entire sample plays and doesn't get cut off or stopped for any reason. You click the velocity range option here. I did, in creating this kit, I realized that if I go into view up here, my velocity range wasn't actually checked. So I checked that, and then if you click save as default, that option now comes up as default. Now what you want to do is, the way I did it was go to the loudest one. So in this case, it's the second rack tom. It's the loudest one, and in the velocity ranges from 0 to 127. Some nerd will tell you why. I don't care. Here, what I was doing here, as there's 12 of them, was breaking them up equally in 10 count bands. As there's an extra 7 here, I was starting the first one on 110. Then I was going up to rack 2_1 here, which will be the second loudest, and then changing that to 100 to 110. And then going down and changing this as follows. So you can see as we're going down consecutively, the numbers decrease by 10. And all that does is means that when you have the piano roll up and you're programming a drum beat or programming, then if you set the velocity to within each of these numbers, it will play this separate sample. And as you're adding every single microphone from here, and you'll put them all on the same key, so that when you hit that key with a trigger note, it will then play each appropriate sample for the velocity. So that's how that works. As this is, I don't want to do this. I don't need that rack tom, so I'm just going to delete that. Also, I do have a few symbols in here because I was just messing around with some symbols from a different sample pack. But those aren't included in Lewis's pack, so ignore them for now. They're just there so that it sounds a bit more cool. Right, so that's saved. If you make any changes, do make sure you do save them, because otherwise you'll be chasing your tail, having to redo all of the annoying admin bits that have to happen for that. So if you open up the mixer, what you have here, I've just programmed a little drum beat here, and down here you'll see that I have all of the appropriate channels. If I show you how to start a new channel, I'll show you how I got there. So this is just a copy of that for the second. You can see it's brought up a new channel down here. So when you create a new software instrument, you'll want to name it. So we're going to name it Lou Drums, and you'll see it has this plus and the minus symbol there. You want to click on the plus, and we're not actually including the hats here, but that channel is there just because I'm using it. But what you'll want is 11 for the 11 different microphones. So you'll create them as you need, and then go down here and you can double click on those and name them as you see fit. I don't need to do that because I've already done it, so let's skip to the end here. I've got kick in, kick out, snare top, snare bottom, tom 1 and 2, the overheads, the slam mic, a close room, medium room, far room. You can see I've got absolutely no processing on any of this, just a little bit of panning on the toms, just to pop them approximately where they are in the stereo field on the overhead channel there. The other thing you will need to do when you create all of these channels and you've named them is up here in the input box here, you'll need to, if you click on that and go down to instrument 1, it's going to bring up all the different options for the routing, and you're going to want to select that in line with what it says on the EXS sampler window here. So for example, the Coles slam mics are all going to 19 and 20, and as you can see here, I've got a slam mic and that's going to 19 and 20. So you'll want to set that the same, and then now we get to the good part. When I press play, you'll see all of the channels will light up with sound. So this is how it sounds with absolutely no processing at all. This is just as the samples come, and as I say, I've added cymbals here. Perhaps I'll just mute those for 1 second. Just skip those. Sorry, so there we go. Those are muted, and now you'll be able to hear just what the kit sounds like with a programmed drum beat. So here we go. And there you go. As you can see, it sounds great, and that's with absolutely no processing at all. It sounds really natural. I haven't done a great deal here with regards to changing the velocities. There's a little bit of, I just went in and changed little bits quickly just to make it sound a little bit more natural. You'll notice when you load up any sample, if you just have it all at the same velocity, it sounds very, very fake. And very weird, and if we're honest, quite a lot like every modern rock record, and no one wants that. So let's move on. What I wanted to do was just show you through here. Now you've got all your mixers set up, you've got all your samples set up. You can go through and listen to each microphone for the you know, the pattern that you've programmed here, and we'll just talk through those. So this is the kick in mic. For those that don't know, that this is sort of how drums would come labelled from a recording studio. Most engineers will lay it out like this, or at least with similar names. The kick in just merely means a microphone that's been put inside the kick drum. Be that if it doesn't have a hole in the front, they'll usually put it. They won't have one of those, or sometimes you'll have a hole in the front of your skin, or no skin at all on the front. Either way, it'll be that microphone that one's coming through, and you get lots of the sort of thud and body and click of the kick sound. And there you go. So this next one you have is the kick out. I think Lewis here has combined the kick out and a kick sub mic together, and they sound like this. So that's kind of the boom and the thud of the kick drum, but when you play them together, obviously, that sounds really good, really well rounded, and lots to play with there. You can all the right frequencies are all there. You can play around with that and sculpt that to whatever you want it to be. The next mic we have is the snare top. Ooh. So that sounds great. That's just your classic microphone pointed at the top of the snare drum. That's where all the crack comes from, and the sort of punch of the snare drum comes from the top mic there. And next we have the snare bottom, and that'll be a microphone pointed at the wires on the bottom of the snare, and that usually gives you the rattle that the wires or the wires give. As you can say, that sounds very good. Very rattly. Together they sound like this. Absolutely brilliant. We have the toms. I have panned these ever so slightly, as I say, just to try and mirror what's happening with the overhead mics there. Sounds like a rack tom. Sounds a bit weird panned all the way, but I'm wearing headphones. Let's try it. There you go. That sounds like a floor tom. And as I say, that's a good way to give an example of the different velocities and how that can help. You'll see here that of this velocity is 66, and this one is 85. So that's just alternating between those. And what that does for you is tries to emulate as best possible the technique that a drummer would use when playing that, when they use the Mueller technique, I believe it's known as, to play fast with one hand. Right, so those are the toms. Next we have the overheads. They sound great, very crisp and clean. Just gives some overall, an overall vibe to the rest of the closed mics. If you wanted to hear just how they sound on their own. So this sounds pretty good already, hey? What we'll do next is we'll go to the room mics, and we'll deal with the slam mic last. So the room mic, I'm not sure exactly what the room mics are here, but this will be a room mic that's close to the drums, and it sounds like this. So that one's cool. Gives you a little bit of ambience, without sounding too roomy. The next one is a medium one, and that'll be further back into the room. That sounds great. There's lots of gives you a little bit of life to the drums. Here we have the far away mic. I have turned this down just because of what I've routed the cymbals to go through there, and they're really loud. And to be honest with you, listeners, I couldn't be bothered to figure it out. I just wanted to get this together so I could get this done. Here's how the room mic far away sounds. If you've ever been to the ranch or seen pictures of it, this mic is actually just outside the live room, in between the live room and the kitchen, getting in everyone's way. Here it goes. As you can hear, that sounds great, perfect for all your Steve Albini nerds out there. So we have the slam mic next. If I just play it on its own. So that one sounds like it's a little ways back from the drums. There's quite a lot of room in that sound, but as you can hear, when the hits come, they sound a little saturated and distorted. And what that does is just give you a to me, it kind of emulates the sound that you get when you're stood in front of a drum kit with a drummer playing really well. It sounds a bit much, and that slam mic there sort of tries to gives you a way to give a bit of that back into the drums. So you don't want really the drums to sound, or even, perhaps you would, but you know, most people would like the drums to sound like drums and not like samples. So if I just play back what we have here, I'll mix in some of that. What I'll do is I'll turn off the room sounds as well, and I'll mix in some of that slam sound so you can just hear what that sounds like. And you can just hear about there, it sort of just comes to life and sounds suddenly like a real drum kit. If I unmute these, you can hear what they're adding. So turn those down a little bit. Great. So that sounds brilliant. As I said, I did add some cymbals here just to be a bit fanciful, and let's just have a listen to what they sound like when they're all there. The hat is just keeping the pulse there, like a drummer would with their foot on the hi-hat when they're playing a pattern like this. It just adds a little bit of life to it all, and you can see I think this sounds, without any processing at all, this sounds pretty realistic, and I think with a little bit more work and digging in, you can probably make it almost pass for a drum track that a drummer has played. So here we go. Sounds rocking. Cool. So there you go. That should just about get you through. There's not really a lot else to explain. The samples sound great. We all have Lewis to thank for that, and I hope everyone gets as much use out of them as I do. Thanks very much. Goodbye.